One of the great proofs of the existence of God, I believe, is the nation of Israel and the Jewish people. Hi, Alex McFarland. Welcome to the Truth for New Generation webcast. You know, we recently on our television program did a show about the nation of Israel. I was very blessed to have on the program Rabbi Joshua ben Gideon. And we talked about the state of Israel, and I encourage people to support Israel, even go there. And it is a great subject, and I want to encourage you to go online and watch that episode of Truth for New Generation Television. But, hey, let me give you some amazing facts about Israel. You know, in May of 1948, Israel was reconstituted as a nation, and in just 72 years, it's amazing. They've gone from not existing as a nation to being, one of the superpowers of the world. I recently had the privilege of interviewing a very high-ranking official from the Pentagon in Washington. And he said, hands down, the greatest military intel in the world is by the Israeli government. And they've had to do that to exist, to stay alive. But it's amazing. There are more, just for what it's worth, interesting facts about Israel, more chess grand masters in Israel than anywhere else in the world. It's amazing. More museums per capita in Israel than in any other part of the world. So much technology has come out of the nation of Israel. Do you know voice recognition software was developed in Israel? It's interesting. Baby monitors were invented in Israel. I would presume that's part of their high ethic for human life. That's one of the things that sociologists like David Goldberg, he wrote the book, Why Civilizations Die. He talked about the two groups that have the highest ethic of life in the world are evangelical Christians and Jewish people. Why? Because we know man is made in God's image. You know, interestingly, in Israel was developed different chemicals that can detect date rape drugs that have protected a lot of lives. It's interesting. Israel has the world's only underwater museum. Interesting. The world's smallest subway system, 1.2 miles in length. Fascinating, fascinating. My point being, I want you to learn about Israel. I want you to know about the Jewish people. Israel has the highest life expectancy of any developed nation in the world, 82 years average. That's a high life expectancy. And proportionately, the highest, interestingly, such a dangerous place to live, the Middle East, because of all the aggression against the nation of Israel. And yet, sociologists, psychologists tell us that overall, there are these matrices by which they measure human thriving and happiness. The overall greatest happiness level, contentment, emotional stability of any ethnic group, any people group, people in Israel. Well, here's the point. I agree with Winston Churchill. Churchill said any thinking person would have to agree the most remarkable race in all of history, said Churchill, are the Jewish people. You know, it's interesting. H.G. Wells, sociologist, historian, novelist. Early in his life, H.G. Wells was very anti-Semitic. But do you know what? During the Holocaust, H.G. Wells became a great proponent for the creation of the State of Israel. And he died in 1946. He didn't quite live long enough to see it come to fruition. But when the Jews were raiding libraries and having book burnings, they burned all of H.G. Wells' books. Why? Because he supported the creation of a state for Israel. And it's very interesting. I think this does speak to the reality of God and the providence of God over the nation of Israel, that support for Israel, among some, it's a resounding point of affirmation, but among others, just to acknowledge Israel's right to exist causes some to be anti-Semitic. But folks, if you want to understand history, not only past, not only the present, but I believe the future, learn about Israel. I want to thank you for watching Truth for New Generation. Hey, share this via your social media platforms. If you would share it publicly, you're automatically entered to win our weekly book giveaway. So let us know what you think about these broadcasts. Thanks for watching. Share with a friend. And we'll see you next time on Truth for New Generation.